There we go. Okay.
And quick question, Sanford, do you want to turn to speaker view or are we still doing gallery view?
Oh, I think this is an okay time to have gallery view for a few minutes, and then we'll,
Sure.
I'll clue people in after that, and we can, people can set the settings as they choose. I also
Okay.
need to stop this music on my end here. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Okay, good. So go ahead and get us started.
All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Mehlaka Samdani. I am Director of Critical Connections, an organization here in Western Massachusetts that typically puts together events on issues related to American Muslims and other targeted communities. However, with the onset of COVID-19, we have decided to suspend all regular programming and instead convene online events that address the many dimensions of this pandemic that we're all collectively facing at this point. And so over the next few weeks, we are hoping to invite speakers who are on the front lines of dealing with this crisis. So policymakers, health workers, community leaders, religious leaders who are again, trying to address this from their places in society and are doing an amazing job of it. And so we really want to bring you as up-to-date information on this as possible. So, which is why we're extremely lucky for our first event to have with us Representative Lindsay Sabadosa, who represents 1st Hampshire District in Massachusetts. Lindsay was very gracious and made herself available on very short notice to really address the community's questions and concerns around the state government's response to this pandemic. So, Lindsay, thank you so much for being here. Lindsay is currently trying to sort of figure out why her video is not working. And so while I'm doing the introduction, she will, I think, try to figure that out. So just bear with us as we try and get the technology in place. So before we begin, just two quick things. First, I'd just like to sort of say how we've sort of structured this event. So for the first 15 minutes or so, I'm going to ask Lindsay a series of questions around key topics that we felt were important. But just so you know, this is just a way to start a conversation. And we really hope that after those 15 minutes, we're going to open this up to the community. And so that members who are joining us, participants who are joining us can address their questions to Lindsay directly about, concerns that they have about various aspects of how this is affecting all of us. So please be ready with your questions, and we really look forward to your participation. We want this to be as interactive as possible. At the end, we will also leave some time for some community connections for people who are joining this call to be able to connect with one another around certain issues. So we might do a breakout session. Yes. We might be able to do breakout sessions as well, and also be able to sort of share connections and links with one another. So that's basically how the next hour and a half is going to unfold. Next, I'm actually going to invite Sanford Lewis, who you all see on your screen right now. He's a wonderful friend who's also co-hosting this event with us. He's a local activist and a lawyer, and he is going to sort of help us just sort of walk through some of the technical details of this event so that, we can run this as smoothly as possible. So Sanford, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, we are all having to get used to this new way of connecting with one another. And my sense, having been on a number of these calls in the last few days, is that there's, there's a little bit of a technical learning curve and understanding what the etiquette and what the rules are. So I wanted to give you a few pointers to make your session as enjoyable as possible and so that you can participate fully. So the first thing I wanted to make sure everybody knows is that in the upper right of your screen, if you're on a computer, there's a little button that says speaker view or gallery view. And if you put it onto speaker view, you get a nice big picture of the person who's speaking, and then you see everybody else up in the upper row. And I think that, when Melika and Lindsay are talking, I think it's probably just as well to put it in that view, but it's your choice. You can look at all the other people. But the second thing that I wanted to say is that it's actually fine and polite for you to hide your video and not be in a box sitting there while she's speaking. I mean, it's nice, I'm sure it's if you're speaking, it's nice to see some reactions from people in the audience and have that feeling. But it's also fine and not impolite to turn off your video if you like, and listen, and then turn it back on when when it's time to ask a question, say. I will be generally muting everybody except for the couple of speakers at the beginning, and then when we get to the Q&A session, I'll probably be unmuting you individually. That way we'll have a relatively noise-free environment. And the other thing I want to call your attention to is that there's a chat window, and at the bottom of your screen you'll see chat, and if you click on that, you can either chat to everyone, which is what it's set as the default, but you can also chat to a particular participant. If you pull down where it says everyone, you'll see the list of participants. And so if somebody says something that you find interesting, or you want to have a little crosstalk with a particular person, feel free to use the chat for that purpose. And along those lines, we will be having lots of time for questions, and we're going to try to be a little bit organized about how we do the questions. So if you know that you have a question that you want to ask, go ahead and make a note of that in the chat window, so that you don't have to like post your question at great length, but say what the question is. Like, I have a question about medical supplies, or I have a question about food or unemployment. Then we will try to group those questions together and try to make sure that everybody gets the opportunity to ask their question. Also, in terms of that chat window, there will be this opportunity, as Melika said, at the end to make announcements, but you can also use that chat box if you just want to let people know through the chat about a particular thing that's coming up. And I think that's about what I had to say. Yeah. So I think turn it back over to you, Melika and Lindsay, and if we may be doing an audio thing if Lindsay's not got the video going yet.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sanford. Thanks so much for that. Lindsay, I think we should be okay. Even if, as long as we can hear you, I think we should be fine. And maybe at some point your video will also appear. So again, Lindsay, thank you so much for being here with us. I am going to ask you a series of questions, as I mentioned, and we recognize that in your role as a legislator, you might not necessarily have control over some of the things that we'll be asking you, but we're asking these questions sort of based on the assumption that you do have access to Governor Baker's office and also state agencies who are sort of working on various aspects of this pandemic. So with that in mind, I'm going to sort of ask a question that I feel is on a lot of people's minds, and that is around testing and testing availability. As of this morning, oh, wonderful. We see you now, Lindsay. Thank you.
You just see me under a different name. Nope. I need to. I'm echoey. Am I echoey for you?
A little bit, yes, but I feel like it's okay.
Let me. Okay. If I mute you on the computer, I think I'm no longer echoey.
Excellent.
Yeah, you would need.
All right. I just couldn't see the chat box if I turned off the computer. So both are on right now.
The ideal would be to have headphones if you have them, but
it's fine. I think we should just go ahead. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Love you, Lindsay. It's so excellent to see you.
It's nice to see you too. Testing. So I think everyone knows at this point, there are a very limited number of tests, and we have been working very hard to get more into the state of Massachusetts and into the country as a whole. So we were very recently working with only several thousand tests. That number has gone up significantly over the last few days. And I think you're starting to see that because you're seeing the number of confirmed cases climbing. There are plans in the works for tests to be done more locally, so we'll be able to test reagents. Bay State is working on that in Springfield, and they'll be able to test many, many, many more patients. Right now, the process is still the same as it was before, even though we have thousands of more tests. DH decides who gets tested. They have very strict guidelines as to who gets tested. And then once a test is completed, it has to be, if it's positive, it's called presumptive positive, and then that has to be confirmed by the CDC. So that means the process is a little bit slow. We're speeding it up, and I think that's why you're seeing. I think today we have, I forget actually what the
Yeah,
last
well, I
number
mean, as
was.
of this morning, we had about 646 confirmed cases in Massachusetts. And in Western Massachusetts, we had about 41 confirmed cases. That might have gone up since this morning.
It
Um,
has. So those numbers come in every day at 4 p.m. from DPH and the CDC. So right now we are at 777 confirmed cases, 79 hospitalizations, and unfortunately 9 deaths already.
Wow. Wow, that is incredibly disturbing. And so, Lindsay, my other question around testing is that, if somebody feels like they have symptoms, where do they go? I mean, do they go to the local hospitals, Cooley Dickinson, Bay State, or are there commercial labs? Like, where should they be heading?
So I know that this seems counterintuitive, but what they are saying is if you feel sick and you think that you have COVID-19, do not go to your local hospital. And the reason they're asking that is so that we are protecting the people within the hospital. They're asking people to contact their primary care provider. Again, because testing is limited, they are only testing under strict circumstances. So we want people to be hospitalized if they are accepting symptoms and they have underlying conditions. The truth of the matter is most people who get COVID-19 will get better, but there are subsets of the population who are most at risk. And so we're trying to reserve hospitalization for those people to begin with. So if you feel sick, call your primary care provider. Your primary care provider will be in touch with the local hospital. They will report that you have COVID-19-like symptoms. And if you meet the criteria, you will be tested. Now, that may change in the coming weeks because there will be increased testing availability. They're already talking about drive-through testing sites in different areas in Springfield. They're talking about setting up one at Cooley Dickinson in Northampton and one at Bay State Franklin in Greenfield. But those haven't been set up yet. So the best thing to do for right now is to follow the old protocol until you're told, nope, those drive-through testing sites are up. Even there, they will be using strict guidelines as to who they test, because again, we want to try to reserve our medical resources for the most vulnerable populations.
Do we have a timeline for when those drive-through tests will be available?
It's days, not weeks, but I don't have an exact date for you.
Okay. And do we have do we have some sense of what our testing capacity is per day right now? And then what will we say in the next few days or weeks?
So we've increased our testing capacity dramatically, and we can test thousands of tests a day now. There's still a turnaround for those tests. So every day, for example, all the area hospitals have been really good about saying these are the number of confirmed cases, these are the number of tests that we have pending, and these are the number of people who were tested and came back negative. So we know that those numbers are going up, but I can't tell you with great specificity Cooley Dickinson will have 3,000 tests, Bay State will have 4,000. It's just not the way it's working. Really, tests are being sent out right now based on the number of requests that the hospital gets. I know that in early days, I can tell you Cooley Dickinson requested 36 tests and they got 3. That's not happening anymore. People are getting the tests that they're asking for, but they're still trying to be very prudent about how they're handed out. That will get less and less stringent the more tests become available. And that's part of what we're trying to do with the supply chain to make sure that we can get the different pieces of the tests that we need. So we need swabs, but we also need the personal protective equipment, the PPE that everybody is talking about to come into the state in much bigger ways. So one of the things that I think all of the area legislators have been doing, I was on the phone earlier this evening with Senator Warren's office talking about how we need to tap into the national stockpile and advocate with the federal government to get that equipment here.
Right. So that was my next question. It was around medical supplies. And before we get to medical supplies, for our healthcare professionals, which is so important, I'm also wondering about medical supplies when it comes to patients, right? So, I mean, New York has repeatedly said in some of the other states as well that they do not have enough ventilators. They do not have enough ICU beds. How are we doing in terms of, sort of being prepared as far as our hospitals are concerned for the influx of patients that will inevitably sort of rise in the coming days and weeks? And are there additional facilities that are being set up to receive patients here in Massachusetts?
There aren't additional facilities being set up to receive patients quite yet, although there are plans in the works if our current facilities cannot accommodate the number of patients. So MEMA, the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, is working on contingency plans. So all of the area hospitals have a plan for what this will look like if they no longer have space. In terms of ventilators and isolation units, I mean, we're in the same boat as I think most of the country right now. I do know that there is a factory in Chelmsford, Massachusetts, that's starting to produce ventilators. So we're trying to kind of catch up, but we know that we're not where we needed to be. I don't think anywhere in the world was actually where they needed to be.
Sure. Lindsay, you know how everybody's been talking about, like a lot of governors that they've been asking Trump to sort of, get on with the Defense Production Act so that you can have these, ventilators, all of these masks, everything being sort of prepared, like, on a war footing, and, and factories being ordered to produce these things. Is there anything at the state level that the governor has the authority to sort of call on local, factories or local companies to be producing this kind of thing? I just don't know it.
Not in the same way that the president does. And the governor has asked any company that can produce PPE to do so. We have been working to find different suppliers. In fact, just the other day, it was covered in the Globe. There was a legislator in Maine who reached out and said she had connections to different suppliers. Massachusetts was able to put in an order. The governor talked about it today at his press conference for millions of PPE. And, he was a little hesitant to be overly joyous because those boxes have not arrived in Massachusetts yet, but the order has been placed, it's been paid for, and we're waiting for that. Every time we find a supplier, there was a connection in New Jersey the other day. Some of these connections are overseas as well. We are putting the governor in touch. There's a whole supply chain command station that is working on this. But we are in a difficult position because basically our federal government has said, if you can get it first, go ahead and do it. We would really like it to be the other way around, where the federal government was taking leadership. They do have the ability to first of all, issue the order, like you said, and really order companies to start producing. And I think we're at a moment of crisis where they should do that, especially because we have factories that have closed right now.
Right.
There are dormant factories. It's not as if we would be asking them to stop producing something else and switch over. We're really saying, just please manufacture something. But the president has not done that, and the states have been left to their own devices to try to figure out how we get the supplies that we need. I mean, it's unfortunate. It would be better if there was somebody who was parsing all of this out.
Of course, of course. And Lindsay, you just actually recently on your Facebook page has sort of, shared this appeal by Cooley Dickinson, one of our area hospitals, that they need masks, right? And you've sort of called out, community members to do what they can. And I know right now there's schools and people who have sewing machines inside their homes. They're literally putting masks together for our healthcare professionals, which is amazing. And, if you would like to speak to that, that would be great. But also, I'm wondering, as individual community members, I mean, if there are people who are, relatively well off and want to contribute in some way, should they be just ordering masks, say on Amazon? Or, I mean, is there a way or, some other way to be able to, get masks to our healthcare professionals? Is that something that is advisable at this point?
Well, if they could find masks on Amazon, that would be, I don't know that anybody can right now. We're not just talking about any types of masks, we're talking about masks that can be used within medical facilities. There's definitely a feeling at some point that right now that something is better than nothing, but we really want to give our medical providers not just masks, but masks that actually protect them. There's work going on across the state to use 3D printers and then the masks that people are sewing so that you're actually having an extra layer of protection. I know legislators were on the phone with Joann's Fabrics today talking about getting the elastic in. They're also running out of some of the basic things that we need to make these masks. But there's actual real collaborative work to make sure that our healthcare professionals are getting access. Although I want to be careful when I say our healthcare professionals, I want to underline our healthcare professionals who work in hospitals, because people who work for behavioral health, substance misuse, in our shelters for people experiencing homelessness, our firefighters, our police chiefs, they also all need PPE and they are not getting it. So while I'm happy when Cooley Dickinson asks for something specific to put out that request, Bay State put out a similar request today. I think we need to remember that the need is much, much greater. And then for other non-hospital settings, it's also cleaning supplies. So hand sanitizer, disinfectant, all of those things are in very short supply. And you have people who, they may not be a hospital, but they're providing really essential services in the community and they're not getting access. So we're really at this point pulling every thread we can find to get them what they need.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I'm just going to shift gears a little bit and sort of turn to, another topic, which again is hugely on people's minds, financial hardship, right? So, I mean, so many people over the past week have filed for unemployment. Just last Monday, there were 20,000 new filings for unemployment sort of related to this. And I'm wondering, I mean, what has been the state government sort of role in this, trying to sort of expedite this process? And also, how quickly can people begin to expect paychecks at this time?
Okay. So the state government has done a few things to, they've certainly worked to expedite unemployment claims processing, and we are seeing that on the ground. One of the things that happens is that people will reach out to my office, and you should reach out to your state representative and senator. I have a document. We're keeping track of everybody who's filed for unemployment. That way, if there are any issues, we can more easily advocate for them because we have some basic information. We're seeing about a 2-day turnaround right now between when you file and when you're either approved or we find out there's something wrong with your application. It can be a confusing process, to be sure. One of the things that we're seeing a lot is that folks are applying and they have a return date to go back to work. And so they get confused in the application because no one wants to lie on a government application. And so they say, yes, I'm not seeking work actively, which is not a requirement. You don't have to do that right now. But the system hasn't caught up with that, and so then your application gets put on hold. So we're telling people, say yes, and then when it asks you for the work log, skip through so that you can complete your application and get your payments. The checks have been going out regularly. We're seeing some checks from the very first week that have already been received by folks. You do have to go in every week and claim your check. So the
that's a
process
very
is
important
expedited.
point because people don't often know that they have to renew that claim every week, right?
Yes. You do. You have to go in and review it, especially if you're saying you've been furloughed or this is a temporary unemployment. It is helpful to say that it is COVID-19 related, although frankly at this point we're treating everything as if it is. The Department of Unemployment has been incredibly accessible. They have worked all weekend processing claims. People kept saying, oh, I'm sure because it's Sunday they're not there. No, they were there doing this work for people. The 1-week waiting period has been waived, so you can apply immediately. And we're really, just trying to do the best we can. It's hard because a lot of people, don't necessarily pay into the system. So we're seeing a lot of people who are self-employed, who are independent contractors. Right now, that means they don't qualify for unemployment. And sadly, that's a really large percentage of our population. There are things that the federal government could do to change that, and we're really waiting on them to do that. I filed legislation along with Rep. Mark, who's a rep from Greenfield, to change that if the federal government goes first, so that in Massachusetts, we will also be providing those benefits in this era of COVID-19. And will also not be penalizing people for taking advantage of them.
Oh, wonderful. Well, that's great news. So another issue, of course, is small businesses and what they have been dealing with in terms of having to shut down, and their workers have been suffering because of that. What kind of assistance are small businesses getting here in Massachusetts from the state?
Not nearly enough. So there were 2 loan programs that were issued by the state of Massachusetts. They were both similar. They were both through MGCC. One is for $10 million. Both were for $10 million. The program became oversubscribed really quickly, and MGCC has shut down applications. They're processing all of the ones that have gone through. Those were loans for up to $75,000 for small businesses with 50 or less employees, and it was an interest-free loan, I believe, for the first 6 months, and then lowest interest rate after. The good news is that well, I guess good news depending on how you want to say it,
Mm.
Massachusetts was declared an economic disaster zone.
Ah,
And so that means that the whole state will qualify for small business loans, and you can go online to the Small Business Administration's website and apply for loans there as well. And we'll continue to try to provide support, but it is very challenging, and we are recognizing that. We're talking about legislation to postpone or to prevent rather foreclosures and evictions. We're trying to include small business owners in those because we know they have lease payments that they have to make, and
right.
that's very hard to do when you're not generating revenue. They have now been included in the utility shutoff. There'll be no utility shutoffs during this period,
Right.
but we're trying to find ways where we're not just seeing bills accumulate that need to be paid off later, but we're actually offering a little more relief. We're also having a conversation, and I know the governor mentioned this, but really the ball needs to get rolling a little bit faster around health insurance payments. A lot of small businesses provide health care for their employees, and with no revenues coming in, they're finding it very hard to make those policy premium payments. So we're looking for some relief for them as well in that sphere. We keep saying to all small business owners, please keep reaching out and letting us know where you're struggling so that we can better advocate for some relief.
Is there a bill in place right
Sadly,
now in the legislature around that people can call
there's
in to
so
support?
much. There are so many, all for different sectors,
Yeah.
but many different pieces have been filed around this. The state has to have a balanced budget. The federal government, as we all know, doesn't. So we really are looking for the federal government to provide assistance in bigger ways because Massachusetts is going to have to file a balanced budget. We know our revenues are dropping off. We know that people are hurting here, and we aren't going to have unlimited pots of money. So the federal government does need to do something.
Wow. Okay. Well, so you talked about small businesses. What about individuals, Lindsay? Like, people who are having difficulty paying the rent, paying their mortgages, paying their, again, utility bills and stuff. Could you talk about relief for any of those payments, and also are there any plans for direct assistance at this point? There've been some ideas that were floating around at the
Right.
federal level, but I mean, could you speak to that, please?
Yeah. Sure. No, there are two really good bills that have been filed on the state level, one by Rep. Bovea, one by Rep. Miranda. Both of them provide direct cash assistance. It is income-based, but they're both very generous, recognizing that we're in a situation where a lot of people, irrespective of what their income was, are struggling. In Massachusetts
Numbers
right
on
now, the
that,
housing
like
courts.
a range of like.
Uh, yeah, let me see. Oh, I bet I can find them easily. Of course not.
and you can actually, yeah, share that with us later as well
Sure.
in the
I
chat
can.
section.
Sure, I will look them up for you. I'm just trying. I know that people have emailed me about them today, so that's why I can
Ah,
always count on my constituents to send out emails. Okay, so the first one is HD 4945. It was filed by Rep. Bovea. It's an act providing for emergency cash assistance in response to COVID-19.
okay.
And then there's HD 4950, filed by Rep. Miranda, an act providing emergency access to equity and justice for all in response to COVID-19. I will also flag a bill, HD 4951, filed by Rep. Decker, and it provides short-term relief to families in deep poverty. So basically, if you are already receiving TNAF payments, transitional assistance for needy families, you would get an extra amount of money on top of that with her bill. So those are three that would provide direct assistance. And then you'd asked about foreclosures and evictions and utilities for individuals. So there's another bill, it's HD 4935. I literally have a constituent who emailed about all of these, so it's really easy to find this. And it's an act providing for a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures during COVID-19. We do know that there's a lot of traction, and we are hearing that that bill is going to move. But in the interim, housing courts are closed in Massachusetts until, I believe, April 21st. So that means that no evictions or foreclosures will be processed, no money orders will be processed until at least that date. And then people will have, and we don't want to see anybody get to that point, but just for informational purposes, if you were being evicted and on April 22nd you were brought to the court, that would be an order, and you would still have time to make payments, to make remedy. In foreclosures in Massachusetts, there are always 90 days before anything happens, and again, the courts are not open until at least April 21st. The governor reiterated that today. I still think that there's more that we need to do on this front, because that's just, bills are just piling up for people. Same thing with utilities. The utilities they've said we're not going to shut off for this period. But again, we don't want anyone having large bills. Every utility company is behaving in a different way. I have an email from one this evening that said, we will have no late payment penalties at all for the next 10 months, and people can set up payment plans over a 10-month period, but everyone is different. So we're trying to get a little bit of guidance from the state for people so that they feel like they have some breathing room.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. I just have one last question, and then we're going to open it up for questions from our community members. And I see that there are quite a few questions that are being lined up, and that is just around food insecurity with regards to our school children. There are approximately 400,000 students, I hear, in Massachusetts who rely on schools for their meals. What is the state government doing to sort of help address that issue now, and what can community members do to sort of really
all coming into my food at the same time? Okay, so any school district that has over 50% children on free and reduced lunch is still providing meals to their children, and that is per DESE. They've been authorized to, with a federal USDA waiver, to serve that food to their students. Every community is organizing that in different ways. Most communities are saying you do not need to A, prove that you are a student in that district, or B, prove that you are actually under the age of 18. I know many communities have organized this irrespective of that guideline. So I represent Northampton. Northampton has done that. There are meals provided and at various sites through the city, and you should definitely look at your local school's website or Facebook page. They're providing that information. If you have a student who has developmental or intellectual disabilities, they can get meals up to the age of 22 as well. But I really think that at this point, no one is being turned away. A lot of local work has been going on to make sure that meals are provided to adults at that same time. So generally what happens is you'll get your lunch, and then you'll get a breakfast for the next morning, and local food pantries, a lot of restaurants, quite honestly, have been donating food to make sure that if a parent shows up with a child, they're getting a meal too, so no one is being turned away. We're also doing a lot of work to try to coordinate all of the food service agencies in the area to talk to them about how we can sort of do more streamlined food provision. So we have a lot of people who are showing up, for example, at the Survival Center. That used to be, more families would go to get food that they were maybe going to bring home and cook. Now we're seeing more people who need to go, and they maybe don't have a kitchen where they can go home and cook. So we're trying to change how that food is provided and meet the needs in the community. It is very hard because a lot of the volunteers don't want to volunteer anymore. They're afraid of catching COVID-19. A lot of them were college students who are no longer in the community, or they were elderly and they're now at an at-risk group, and they really shouldn't be out doing these. So we're definitely looking for volunteers, and the agencies are really looking for ways where they can minimize contact. And that's been a continuous conversation, but we're having weekly calls now to talk about how we continue to meet changing needs.
Okay, excellent. And so I guess if people, community members really want to help, they should just reach out to their local school districts, right? Because school districts would know who to direct them to if they want to either volunteer or contribute food or things like that.
So that you can't contribute food to the school district. The school district has to distribute food that it purchases and that comes through
Okay.
different funding sources. And a lot of times they're not even looking for volunteers, but
Okay.
they are, but your food pantry is. So I think your local food pantry would probably be the best source
Okay.
of information.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. So that concludes the first part of our conversation. And now we're just literally going to open it up to our community members. There are lots of questions. And Sanford, I believe you're going to sort of facilitate this part and maybe just start by calling out on people in terms of the questions that they have sort of.
Sure.
We can't hear you, Sanford.
Sorry, there we go. Okay.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, so I've been monitoring the questions that have been coming in, and a general observation is that maybe not surprisingly, I mean, I've sort of been hearing this, most of the questions concern the economic impact of what's happening. There are some questions of concern about the health of people, but quite a few of the audience here are very concerned about the economic impact that it may have on them or others. So let's kick it off with Rec. I'm going to unmute you. There you go. Okay.
Randy.
Go ahead.
Hi, Randy.
Hi. I was just asking, I can just read off what I worded here. Hi, Mecha, it's good to see you. That I saw that Governor Baker is asking the Department of Public Health to ask all issue an order that all non-essential businesses close in-person operations. And I'm just wondering, I heard about the unemployment opportunities, but there are a lot of people who fall between those cracks. And as a psychotherapist, I see a lot of these people who are struggling in this, where they're not necessarily eligible to apply for unemployment. They still have jobs. Maybe they're tipped workers who are no longer going to be able to get tips because they're just helping with carry-out orders. Or I just talked to a client via a telemental health session today, who does still have a job, but because she's working from home, she's only getting a percentage of her pay. And I'm wondering about what kinds of economic relief there may be for people like that. And with the trickle down, you were talking about utilities before, and also rent relief. I hear about the eviction protections, but just wanting to know what to be able to tell people, and what kinds of resources, and how that would be
Actually,
addressed.
don't answer yet, because I think it would be good to take a few of these questions and cluster them together. So let's just hear from a couple other people, and then because I can see that it's a cluster of these kind of concerns, and then we'll have Lindsay come back and answer a few of these. T-Toad Ryan, I'm unmuting you. Let's see. Unmute. Try again. Okay, well, if that doesn't work, oh, no. Seems to not be working. Okay. I'm going to go next to Kathy. Okay. Kathy. Sorry about this. I am going
Are
to.
people muted?
I'm trying to unmute them. I'm actually going to I'm simply unmuting everybody now. So please refrain from making noise, and we will see if Kathy is available. Kathy, did you want to ask a question? No. Jocelyn, do you want to? No, wait, no, don't do that question yet. Lindsay, why don't you just answer the first person's question, and we'll see if we can get some of the other people on.
Okay, so just going back up to see the question. So basically, people who are tipped workers and people who have reduced hours. So both of those categories can apply for unemployment. Unemployment is really based off of how much they make. So if they were tipped workers in the past and they're now making less, they can apply for unemployment for the difference, because that's considered a reduction in hours. The same thing if they're working at home. A lot of employers are taking advantage of an option available in Massachusetts called work care. Work care is maybe, I had one business the other day where employees were going to only be working 60% of their regular hours and they'd be getting unemployment the other 40%. So they can apply. Now, is it enough? No, none of this is enough. None of this is going to be enough. I think we're all going to feel an economic impact from this, and we're going to do the best we can to try to relieve that to the extent possible. But there's economic pain from the shelter in place, the stay-at-home advisory.
Lindsay, I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second. Everybody who's on this call, can you please mute yourselves because we can hear all the background noise.
I'm going to remute everybody and try to grab speakers again. So I've muted everybody.
But that was so fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, actually it didn't. I think that I think that my magic buttons are not working here so good. That's what's happening. Well, there you go. So not everybody's muted, but let's just keep going.
Okay. Well, what I
Oops, sorry. Now, now I succeeded. Duh. All right. I want to get Lindsay back on, right?
Nope, I got it. I can do it.
Oh, okay.
There
Okay.
we go.
All right.
All right. So what I wanted to say was, yes, everyone, if they've had a reduction of hours, they should apply for unemployment. Is it going to be enough? No. Unemployment is 50% of your salary. It is not going to be enough. We are all going to feel the economic impact of this. But I want to underline that the reason this stay-at-home advisory, or whatever the governor wants to call it, is necessary is because of the curves. If you've seen the spike that could happen if we do nothing, it could devastate our healthcare system, and we could see far more deaths than we will see if we actually stay at home, if we really social distance, and we do what all the countries who are ahead of us on this trajectory are telling us that we need to do. So we're going to have to figure out the economic pain part of this in order to save lives. It is actually critical that we follow those instructions, and I can't stress enough how important that is. This is very, very serious. We would not be taking these serious actions if it weren't.
I am going to ask Kathy's question because I've learned that she can't get the audio to work herself. So she says, as a small retail business owner, I can tell you that adding a loan payment to the other debt I will be climbing out of is not possible. Is there anything coming down the pike as a handout for us, like what's been given to banks, auto industry, et cetera, et cetera? 50% of the American workforce is employed by small businesses like mine. If we sink, so goes the workforce. What will be the state's response to Trump's press conference today that it's time to start opening businesses back up? Because the U.S. was not made to be closed down. As this epidemic is on the increase, what will Massachusetts' response to this be?
Well, I think Massachusetts did respond today. We did the exact opposite. We said that it is time to shut down. The state is going to try to do as much as we possibly can for our small businesses. We need the federal government to also do that. It is not all right that there are bailouts for cruise liners and there are not bailouts for our small businesses. So that's where our advocacy has been, again, with our federal delegation over and over and over, that we need more relief than just the loans, that there needs to be an actual handout. This is where we're coming from when we propose these cash assistance programs and ways that we just get money into people's hands right now. But there's no easy answer, again, on the state level. We are trying, but the money, it disappears almost immediately. Like I said, we've already put 20 million into the loan program, which I understand a lot of businesses may not want to take advantage of. But at the same time, you know, the economic impact is something that we don't even know the end of quite yet.
I am going to see if William wants to ask a question. He has a different topic.
Sure.
William, I think you're unmuted now.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can.
I am concerned that there are supply shortages for face masks and gowns and gloves and things of that nature for medical workers, but also for citizens that may need to sometimes go out face to face, where contagion could be mitigated by masking or other equipment. And just wanted to know if there's any notions about how to mobilize either private sector or DIY people to start making stuff, distributing them to where they're needed. I have myself a Facebook group that's looking into the question of mobilizing for face masks, for example.
Right. So there are lots of groups across the state that are forming. I know quite a few are forming locally. Sewing circles are popping up all over the place. The MNA is doing a collection, so they have drop-off points if you want to get them into the hospitals, because there are special washing and cleanliness procedures that have to happen. I think the material has to be washed before you sew. I am not a sewer, but I think before you sew and then again after. So they're taking responsibility for that final disinfection of any masks that are donated. And I can share with you different drop-off points. They're all up and down the Connecticut River Valley to try to make sure that people who want to make those donations can do so safely. I know that they're happening in smaller communities too. I represent the town of Southampton. There, the fire department and the police do not have the access they need. And so those circles are popping up. We've yet to pull all of that together statewide so that we kind of know where everything is happening. But it's been a really beautiful gesture from the local towns. You know, for us, we're trying to focus on the bigger supply chains. So like I said,
Yes.
The supplier in Maine, the supplier in New Jersey, there are international suppliers who are offering to bring in masks. I mean, those are millions and millions of masks and supplies, ventilators, gowns. There are these wonderful hoods that they have in South Korea that are, you can work a whole day in the hospital and you're very protected. So these are the type of things we really want to see our medical professionals get urgently. But right now, if community members want to donate, they should keep doing that. And I will share the drop-off points.
And I just like to say, William, I mean, thank you so much.
Very much.
And William, I mean, if you could also share in the chat, like after this event is over, if you could share in the chat your Facebook page where you're actually mobilizing people to make those masks and everything, we would like to share that as well so that, as many people hear about it, the better. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll do that right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sanford, next question.
I am not. I'm not sure. If anybody actually, if somebody wants to ask a question, would you like just literally raise your hand in the video so that I can see? Because I'm not sure. Okay, Jody, hold on a second.
Thank you.
You can unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, my lighting is not so good.
No worries.
I was waiting to hear what the governor was going to say today.
Yep.
And I was pretty unimpressed by how lukewarm his, what I'm considering his fairly spineless directive is. I feel like we need a much more strenuous, more like a lockdown in this state. And I'm really worried that the window is closing, and I'd like to know if there's any hope that we're gonna move in that direction before things get completely screwed.
So the governor, if you've been following the governor's press conferences, he has been for several days saying he's not going to issue a shelter-in-place order. I was actually one of the legislators who signed on to a letter. I think there were about 50 of us, state and local officials, who said, you need to do this. It is a public health crisis. So his order today for us felt like the first sign of any sort of compromise about this. I do agree it's not as stringent as it could be. The category of essential businesses is very long. And I think we have a lot of concerns about enforcement. Putting that on local communities is really, really rough. I was talking to a colleague who represents a lot of very small towns, and she said, who here is ever going to be out enforcing that? We can barely keep up with the things that we asked our police to do before, and now they're supposed to be enforcing an order from the governor. So I don't know that we're going to see anything stronger from the governor. And although I hope that he is going to, at the very least, talk more about the gravity of the situation. He has been walking a very fine line, and I do understand not wanting people to panic, because we're seeing what happens when people panic. They go to the store and they buy absolutely everything, and there is hoarding, and that's part of the problem. Our supply chain right now should be able to keep up with the situation that we're in, and it's not for certain products. And that includes the masks. There's been a lot of hoarding of masks and hand sanitizer, never mind the toilet paper and the canned products. So he is trying to not incite any more panic, but there are things that he could do that would get us closer to really getting a much more flattened curve, preventing a lot of illness and preventing a lot of death. So, we're going to keep pushing him on it. We push him on a daily basis. But I understand the concern, and I understand that we do not have time on our side.
Ruth, I think you have something else that you wanted to say, and I see you, Sarah. We'll get to you. Ruth, did you want to say something else?
Sure. Let me start my video. Sorry. My question is maybe not as relevant, but I just wanted to clarify something that you said, Lindsay, that they're not even checking for unemployment benefits, that you don't have to prove that you're looking for work, because I had just started unemployment before all of this started, unrelated to COVID-19. So I just wanted to clarify, is that going to apply to everybody?
It should, yes, it should. And so, right now, your ability to look for a job is impacted by COVID-19. So I don't know. I know when you go in every week, you are checking off that you are looking for a job. I would just continue to do that, but no one is going to verify that, and your benefits aren't going to change. It's part of a much larger conversation, but there had been hopes to update the whole unemployment website before this happened, so that it would handle situations like this better. That didn't happen before COVID-19 became a reason for a lot of unemployment claims. And so right now we're just kind of guiding people through that system. And then if they do get hung up, or there are, benefits get put on hold, we are reaching out to unemployment as quickly as we can. But we're not telling people to be dishonest, but the situation is what it is. It is very hard to look for employment right now. We know that. And so, the goal is to get benefits extended and to as many people as possible.
Okay, thanks.
Is that helpful? Yeah.
Yes.
Prakash, unmute. There you go.
My question is, there are people who still don't have primary care doctors. And so for many different reasons, how should they go about getting help when they can't call their primary care?
That's a good question. So if you don't have a primary care doctor, I would reach out to either a local, really all you're trying to do is get an initial screening, right? It's not even about coming in for a visit. It's explaining what your symptoms are and what your medical situation is so that they can screen you. I will share, there are numbers that you can call. So if you don't have a primary care, that might be a good choice. You could also call a community health center. What we're really trying to prevent people from doing, just in full honesty, is walking into the emergency room with symptoms, because those people might have COVID-19 or they might not, but we need to make sure that our emergency rooms are not overloaded. So I will give you numbers that you can call if you do feel symptomatic and you do not have a PCP to reach out to.
So Lindsay, will you do that?
Yeah.
At the end of the call, maybe just
Yep.
in the chat. That would be super
Yep.
helpful.
There's a hotline, so I'll put that in there. Sure.
That would be amazing. Lindsay, also, I know it's coming to 8 o'clock and you've been so gracious with your time. Would you be okay with just a few more questions? We
Sure.
really,
No, I see there are a lot of them, so sure.
thank you so
Okay.
much.
All
Thank
right.
you all.
We'll go to Sarah next. Go ahead.
Hi. Lindsay, I know that you have an emergency bill out for decarceration, and I'm really concerned about, I heard that there's already been an outbreak in one of the jails in Massachusetts, and it really worries me. Besides decarceration, though, I'm also concerned about what's happening inside jails and people's ability to get access to soap, to be apart from each other. So I wonder if you could speak to that and how we might help facilitate passage of this bill.
Yes, so I did file an act around decarceration and COVID-19 that has been getting co-sponsors, and it has led to a lot of conversation. Basically, the bill does a number of things. It first of all asks local jails, which are almost like petri dishes for all infections. You get people who are picked up and brought in pretrial on a regular basis. They come in with all different types of health situations, and so the goal is really to ask our sheriffs to not bring people in for pretrial unless it's necessary. So now people who are simply there because they can't afford bail, people who might be immunocompromised, we aren't saying you must not bring these people in. It's not an order, but it's you must review the cases and then based on these criteria make a decision that is in the interest of the best interest of public health and public safety. So that's the first part. The second part is asking both our jails and the Department of Corrections to look at people who are sentenced and whether they still need to be in jail. There are a lot of people who qualify for medical parole, but who have not been paroled. There are many people who are at the very end of their sentence. They have maybe 2 or 3 months left. We're saying in that case, given that there is this pandemic, release those people earlier if that's safe and in everyone's best interest. We're also asking about sanitation. So a lot of jails and prisons do not have soap. They do not have hand sanitizer. People are sleeping for pretrial, especially in pods. So you have, in Hampshire County, I think that's about 14 people in bunk beds in the same room. I know at MCI Framingham, pretrial is actually about 60 women sleeping in bunk beds in the same room. Not particularly good places to prevent the spread of infectious disease to begin with. And so I filed this piece of legislation and we're working on it. We're having conversations with all of the sheriffs and the DAs as well, which is something that I would recommend people reach out and talk to them about in their communities, because these are hot spots. We've seen this around the world. We have seen the prisons and jails be the places where disease really breaks out. And, even if you are the biggest, like, law and order, I don't ever want to let anyone out of jail in person, you are then impacting the families and loved ones of everyone who works in those facilities as well. So I think the impact is not just within those walls, it's far beyond it. And we really do need to minimize those populations.
Thank you.
Anyone
You're
else?
welcome.
Anyone else have a question? You can just sort of raise your hand like that, or.
I see a lot of questions about people talking about unemployment and a lot of small businesses as well. And I just want to reiterate for all of those people that, you can reach out directly. I am in daily contact with many of the chambers of commerce and in Northampton with the DNA, trying to share information as it's updated. If you're filing for unemployment, my office is here to help with that too. So you can
actually,
reach out directly. You don't have to do it over a video chat. You can call me. I'm happy to give you my cell phone number. At this point, just call me and I will make sure that you get the help you need.
So it is really puzzling to think about. Like, so I'm a lawyer, and I think my work flow is about to dry up. It wouldn't occur to me to apply for unemployment at that point. And many people who are, you know, who are freelancers, the idea, it seems an alien concept that's not really intended for me. But you know, it's going to be a general population thing. And, you know, this question that TT, who I don't think is here anymore, asked is, do I actually say that I'm looking for work? Because, you know, I mean, I guess there are some jobs there are going to be some jobs in this economy. They're going to move around a little, but the idea of looking for work in this economy is going to be really kind of an alien, difficult topic.
Right. I mean, what the unemployment office is saying is you put that you are looking for work because that may mean, and right now we're not at the point where self-employed people are filing for unemployment. We're still waiting for the federal government to hopefully make that a reality. But the idea is that we're hoping that a lot of these businesses are going to come back and that a lot of the employees are furloughed. So they're saying if you're in contact with your previous employer, then at that point that counts. If you're available because your previous employer could call you back into work. I mean, this is the case with a lot of restaurant workers in particular, a lot of the retail stores. We don't know what that's going to look like in the end, but that's the advice that we're being given right now from the unemployment office. So that's why we're telling people put that you are looking for work, and when it says log your search, just click next. You don't have to log anything, and let's make sure that you get the benefits you deserve because we are in an emergency situation.
And
if nobody else has a question, I thought of another question that seems kind of important, which is sort of beyond the issue of schools that Melika mentioned, the possibility that there's going to be disruption of the food supply chain, and you know, the complicated issues that are already happening with people hoarding and the difficulty that people are, and as this economic hardship happens, as we're hearing from everybody saying, well, everybody's going to be basically unemployed. Are there any sort of massive efforts that you're aware of that are underway or under consideration to get a lot of food to people?
Yes. So there are so we have FEMA and MEMA working right now, and they are in charge of making sure that that they're monitoring the supply chains rather, to make sure that we're still able to get food. There are emergency stockpiles that we can tap into if necessary. We are nowhere near that point yet. But all of that is under constant control, and there are contingency plans in place, just normally, not, you know, that's part of good emergency management. Of course, I guess one could argue with the PPE situation that we were definitely not prepared the way that we needed to be, but at least with food, because this has happened, because emergencies have happened in the United States in the past, there are plans, and we do know where we would be able to tap into resources if necessary.
Jen, do you just raise your hand? You have a question? Oh, sorry.
I will say, though, I mean, one of the things that I think at least the legislature is doing in significant ways is watching what has happened in other countries. So we spent a lot of time looking at what this looked like in China, like where the peak was and when it started to drop off. We're looking very closely at what's happening in Europe, because we think that we're several weeks behind where they are. But even in countries that have the most severe number of cases and the greatest impact, even in Italy and France and the UK right now, the supply chains are not broken. Their grocery stores still have plenty of food. People are able to get out and they're able to access it, even with total shutdowns.
Anybody else have a question?
I think we have time for maybe just one more question, because we just want to be
Yeah.
mindful of Lindsay's
Right.
time as well.
Yeah.
And she's been so generous with it. So
And I do just want to reiterate, if you want to reach out independently to ask anything, please do, and I'll put my contact information there.
Great.
I see a lot of people asking about Kathy's question, but I feel like we did answer it, or am I
I
wrong?
think so. I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
yes.
Well, then, Melika, would you like to do a wrap up, and then we'll have a little opportunity for people to make announcements, and
Sure.
talk about how people can stay connected.
Right. So, well, I mean, I just want to, on behalf of everyone, just thank Lindsay so much for all of your tireless efforts on all of our, behalf and on behalf of all of our communities. Thank you so much, Lindsay. You've been so accessible, and again, made yourself so, available for us. So I really appreciate that. Just please let us know as well if there's anything that we as a community can do to support any of your efforts. Calling, whatever it is that we can do. So thank you again so much. And also, I would just like to say that we would like to sort of, continue. We're going to continue with these series of events where we're going to bring in, again, people working on the front line. So for the rest of the participants here, please, if you want to stay on for a little bit, that would be great. You have the ability to have people break out in sessions around some of the things that Lindsay had talked about and elaborated on, so we can do that. If you'd like to sort of stay connected to Critical Connections and our events, please find us on Facebook. You can also go to criticalconnections.org and just sort of put in your email, and you'll be on our mailing list as well. So we'll keep you posted on all of those things. And so that's basically it. So Lindsay, we'll say goodbye to you because, again, we don't want to keep you longer than we absolutely have to.
Thank you. I'm going to, since I'm on in 2 ways, I will just spend a minute and type contact information and such in the comment box and share some resources. Thank you very much.
That's great.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. And again, we're going to ask everybody here as well if they have resources or links to resources that they'd like to share, like William did with his Facebook page. That would be amazing.
Right, and we can take a few minutes now, and if anybody has announcements that they want to make, I'll make one announcement to start. I have put up a new, I'm trying to figure out how I can be helpful and contribute, and I realize that the issue of food and coronavirus is really an important subset of issues, so I've created a new blog, foodandcoronavirus.blogspot.com. And there's a little video there about the school lunch issue.
Did you share that? Can you share that on the chat as well?
Oh, yes, good idea. Thank you very much.
That would be
Yes,
great.
I will do that right now. So anybody else, if you have any similar announcements or whatever announcements about events, anything, go on Rec. Yeah.
Randy.
Randy. Okay, unmute. I'm unmuting you. There you go.
There you go, thanks. I was just going to add, I got something on an email from the Tuesday market today, just related to the food issue, that there are a lot of ways that we can help support local farmers, and they're taking online orders for some of the kinds of things at the farm. So I think any opportunity we have to support our local growers, our local suppliers like that, to just encourage anyone who is in a position to be able to do that, to do so.
Great, thank you, Randy. And again, if you have links, please share them in the chat.
I will. That's what I was just looking up when I got the okay here. So,
because as far as I know, we can actually save the chat, as a document, and we can actually send that out to you all, if that would be helpful.
Well, we don't have. I'm not sure we have an email address with everybody's email, but we can post it somewhere.
And well, if everybody can
put your email address in the chat, yeah.
And I will put my email address there as well. And also, if you're on criticalconnections.org, and if you put your email there, we will send it out as a mailing as well. Yep. So, so that would be one way of sort of getting all of this information in one place as well.
Okay, I'm putting my email. Whoops, that was funny. That didn't.
If anybody else has any announcements, please go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Anybody? No. Okay. Well, I don't think that we should try to go to breakout groups now. I think that
it's pretty late.
Very full session, and so Melika's got a lot of other good plans that she's working on for more sessions, and I think this was, incredibly worthwhile. And I'm really.
And if you have more ideas, if you have more ideas
Well,
about what
that's
would
a
be a
thing.
good, that
Right.
would be great as well. Please share that with us as well.
That's right. In fact, if anybody has an idea of something that you think we should do another session on, you could also, share that idea right now as well. If you have something that you'd want to do or even want to lead, William, would you want to lead a session talking about the medical supplies some more and how people can be involved? That could be the kind of thing that we could do more outreach on.
Absolutely. So yes, I mean, any ideas that you have, that would be great. I think Marisa also had a quick question or a comment to make.
Yes, go ahead. Yep.
Hi, Melika and everyone. I'm a local clergy person, and our church, of course, is trying to do everything through either Facebook Live or YouTube or Zoom. And one of the things we encountered this past weekend that we didn't the weekend before, I think is a topic for the next few weeks for us to consider, which is there was much more disturbance in the ethos. So we had a lot more technical problems, and I think it had to do with the volume of people being online at the same time. And so as more and more of us go to digital means of communicating and trying to be community, we may run into issues of that. And I wonder if and we're all trying to get educated so fast on some of these technologies that having a conversation about how to digitally meet and do it with the most technical success would really be very relevant for any type of organizing, not just religious, but any kind of coming together around topics like food disbursement and incarceration issues and all of that. So it's a topic I think is sort of showing itself now that we hadn't anticipated.
Well, you're talking. It seems like you're talking about the sort of technical challenge, partly of the technical challenge of what happens if the network gets overloaded and we get busy signals or we can't get on and all that kind of thing. I am really interested in trying to figure out how to use this technology in a way that really gives people more than just a sense of sitting in front of the computer. How do we really get people to really feel deep connection, across these airwaves? And so, that's a conversation that I'm really trying to start with people, including how can we, have a sense of creating together in a forum like this or in breakout groups where we really, do something that feels truly collaborative. Prakash, you got your hand up? You want to say something?
Yes, I did.
Morty.
Yeah, I just discovered something that everyone could do is that in the bottom right of the chat window, 3 little dots, and one of the options, you click on that says save the chat as a file. You can save it so that all the comments and things with questions and links are there.
We will.
I think I'll write them all down.
Yes. So anybody can save it now. Morty, you want to say something? Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. From the technical perspective, if you start to overload the system, the less video you use. I mean, I know it runs into your issue of keeping it more humane and human, but if you can't talk, you can't.
So is what you're saying that if you are on a chat and it's like feeling overloaded, then you should turn off some of the videos.
Everybody shuts down their video.
People shut down their videos, and then we might not have the same level of interruption. Well, that's good to know. I think it's a bigger system-wide issue that goes beyond this one little chat, but maybe not.
No, Zoom has limited bandwidth.
Okay. Good. So that's something that we definitely want to remember. If it gets garbled, you start to say, okay, we're gonna, everybody turn off your video. I don't think I have the capacity as the moderator to actually turn off everyone's video. So they'd have to do it themselves. But that's very good information. Thank you.
I think Sarah had a question.
Sarah, yes. Go ahead, Sarah. Whoops. There you go.
Okay, I got myself unmuted. Sorry. I would just like to have a program or something on a good part of our time at home and have time. How can we be help. I don't know. So, and I know people are talking a lot about making face masks, but are there other things we can be doing? I know that our Synagogue Social Justice Committee sent out a bunch of bills, a lot of them that Lindsay proposed, and asked us to write to our legislators and ask them to co-sponsor these. But what else can we be doing? I mean, it's kind of driving me crazy that I don't know what I can be doing to be helpful.
Well, I think that's a great question, Sarah. And I feel like you, of all people, and so many people on this call right now are so brilliant and talented in their own ways. You write amazing columns. I think you can write many more columns about what, what people are experiencing, what people are going through. I feel like whatever talent we have or whatever skill we have, we can use it in the context of what's happening right now. I feel like food insecurity and sort of really volunteering with food banks right now is a big, huge thing. They again are out of volunteers. They need more people. So I feel like those are some things that we could be doing. I don't know, what other ideas do people have?
Well, I think that, what I would say is that, my sense is that there's just a world of need right now. And that, if you look at the landscape of what people are doing and identify a niche of something that you want to contribute, I think, so that's why I just decided, all right, food security is not really an issue that I work on, but I realized that got to start somewhere. And it's just like, a world of need, and pick something, but also try to what's been reinforced to me is that there are a lot of organizations that know pieces of this puzzle. And so finding an organization that you feel an affiliation with and sort of talking to them about what they're doing and where they can use a volunteer might be the maximum bang for the buck that you could get.
And guys, I just like to say, we could not have had this meeting today without Sanford's support. So, I mean, he was just so willing to provide the support, and he's been doing it not just for Critical Connections, but to other organizations as well who want to put together events, and he's been providing the technical support for that. And I really cannot manage technology by myself, as is evident, but, he was able to do that, and we were able to sort of turn our platform around and do it to sort of meet the needs of people right now in the context of COVID-19. And it was because he offered his skills.
Right. And it's simply, this is not something that I knew had to do before a week ago, although I'm a filmmaker, so I have like a little technical skill, but like basically I'm looking and I'm going like, okay, people really need somebody to be a moderator on some of these Zoom chats and figure out the etiquette of it. And so I'm just, filling in where
the sound just went. Oh, your sound went.
Oh.
No, I can put the sound back on.
You're on.
We hear you. Okay.
Oh, Randy?
I just wanted, related to the sort of bandwidth issue on a more macro level, just put a plea out to people as someone who is equally or probably more very low tech. I have scrambled over the last week to try to learn how to suddenly move my entire clinical psychotherapy practice online. And part of the challenge, and there are a lot of doctors out there that are now needing to see patients by telemental health. And it sounds echoey. I hope that you're not hearing that.
Little thing is happening, but so far it's okay.
So for the people who are bored in the middle of the day, if you don't need to be on the web, please find something to do besides streaming movies, because those of us who are trying to provide critical services to people are finding it really challenging because the internet is just completely overloaded on a macro level. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Randy. That's a very important point. Yeah.
Alyssa, you have your hand up. You want to say something? I'm going to unmute. Yeah, you're unmuted. Okay, go ahead.
Yep. I was just going to say in response to Sarah Weinberger that if you're looking for some way to volunteer, you could call your area agency on aging in Franklin County. That would be LifePath. But look up, area agencies on aging are all over the country. So find your local one, call them up, and just volunteer to be a backup for a Meals on Wheels driver in case we start having Meals on Wheels drivers get coronavirus and need to take 2 weeks off. That's one thing. Another thing is volunteer for the Medical Relief Corps, the MRC, and that was founded after 9/11. I think that's also countrywide, but you can find your local one and do that. So those are my two suggestions for those folks looking for something to do.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Morty, did you want to, you still have your hand up, or Morty? No, okay, all right. Oh, lower hand. Oh, I see, it says lower hand. Okay. All right, well, anybody, any last words from anyone? Melika, you wanna take us out?
Sure. Again, thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for your questions. I feel deeply enriched by just hearing you all and learning from you. So thank you all for being here. We will continue again to have these events, and we hope you will join us. Again, please share ideas. I would again encourage everyone, like Prakash did, to sort of save the file that's on chat, because so many great resources have been shared today. So please do that. And I believe Sanford is also going to save it, and perhaps we can sort of share it with the larger list. This event was recorded, so we will also put that on Facebook, so that you can share it with other people who you think might find this useful. So again, thank you all so much, and thank you, Sanford, for bringing us all together.
Most welcome, glad to do it. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye. I'm gonna end the meeting now.